Thank you for listening to Footnotes, a Fellowship Mosaic podcast. This is a space for us to dig deeper into Scripture, what is happening in our community and culture, and continue the conversations we start on Saturday nights. We're excited to have you join us as we pursue truth, holiness, and redemption together.
Well, hello, welcome back to Footnotes. It's Nick here, and I am joined by Dr. Ted Lennard. Hey, Ted, how's it going?
Hey, Nick. How's it going? It's a great day.
It is a great day. We just got a little light rain shower cooling things off, so I'm feeling it. So, well, hey, we were really blessed to have you in Mosaic this past Saturday, teaching out of the book of Acts. And before we dive into some of those particulars, I wanted to give you a chance to tell just a little bit more of your story. How do you go from being a medical doctor, practicing for how many years? Can I ask that question, or am I putting you on the spot?
No, right at 38 years since finishing medical school.
Okay.
Probably 34 years in Springfield, Missouri.
So this is a surprising turn for this second career that you're in right now.
Yeah, I really had no idea I would be in this type of position. It's been amazing. It's such a privilege and honor, but it was certainly not planned or anticipated.
Okay, so what led you down this road? What led you, in your serving at your church and your curiosity and everything? How do you get to where you are from where you were?
Well, I'm practicing full-time, had been doing that at the time probably 32 years, and I knew that at some point I needed to start backing off, and simultaneously I had a daughter that moved to Northwest Arkansas. She and her husband, we already had, my brother-in-law lives here, and my wife Suzanne's uncle also lived here. We love Northwest Arkansas. We came here a lot, came to the Razorback games a lot, and when she moved here, we actually bought a house in Bentonville, thinking we would come back and forth between Springfield and Bentonville. And then also simultaneously, I had enrolled in seminary at Talbot Seminary through Biola in their Master's in Christian Apologetics program, and was moving along there. And really my prayer was, Lord, what are next steps for me and for Suzanne? We had that prayer, where do we go from here? Our children are raised, and we're just kind of open-handed with where we should go, what we should do. We ended up selling our house, and I had a friendly lunch meeting with the director of the training center, Chip Jackson, and in that conversation, he asked me, would it be in the realm of possibility that you would come to work for the training center? And I nearly fell out at the time, having no any kind of an inkling of even knowing that was a job that would be available or something that anyone would ask me about.
Tell me, this is how Chip tells the story. You tell me if this is accurate. He said you were graciously saying, I'm moving to Northwest Arkansas and would love to volunteer, serve however I can. And he said, I have a better plan for your life. Is that fairly accurate?
Well, there was probably something along that line in the conversation before he asked the question that, hey, we're moving here, hopefully I can get involved, maybe teach a class or two. We'd love to do that. And then he popped the question. Suzanne and I took some time, thought about it, prayed about it, and really felt like it was an answered prayer.
How, in your practicing of medicine, and as someone who loves science, loves health, loves the human body, how does that lead you to a greater appreciation of God and who He is? What was that connection like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to look at the details of the human body, to know that there is a maker, a fine tuner, is just incredible. And I think really seeing that my first year in medical school, when we, initially were dissecting cadavers and looking at the intricacies, of course, looking at the microscope, looking at how the human body works, just overwhelmed with that idea, that thought. And for me personally, that just deepened my faith along the way. And I always sort of would look back at that as far as a baseline of, of our God, our Maker.
I don't know if you experience this way. Like I have like the arguments that I can make that are kind of the linear deductive arguments, but then there's also just an awe when I look at creation that all arguments aside, I just find myself going, God did this. There's just this kind of gut level of appreciation of the wonder and beauty of creation that just leads me to worship.
I was sitting in one of my seminary classes, and the professor was talking about that very thing and used the word awestruck. And that's not a word that I typically use, but as he was doing that, he was showing images of the James Webb telescope out into the future, as far as, not future, but the distance. And my mind immediately went to the microscope on looking at it, the cell, the DNA under electron microscopy, and just to see the differences between the distances away, the distances are macroscopic and microscopic.
It's pretty incredible. Ted, if there's a word I have heard used to describe you more than any other since you've been on staff here, the word that I hear is winsome. That you have a charming way of very kindly talking to people and winning people over with the way that you show them respect as you're talking, whether it's in just general chit chat, even in sometimes when there's conflict. Like, you just have a kind winsomeness to you. And I thought if there was anyone to deliver the message you did on Saturday, with those, you gave us two ditches. On the one hand, we could fall into the ditch of silence, not speaking for the gospel when we need to. On the other ditch was being disrespectful. If there's somebody who embodies that message and lives that out of staying out of those two ditches, I would say it's you. Tell us more about those two ditches of silence and disrespect, and what are some of the dangers? How do you help people navigate that when you think about a witness?
Well, first of all, I'm certainly guilty of falling into those ditches, and I even said that Saturday night that my tendency would probably be to fall in that ditch of silence, in the sense that in my mind I know what I should say. I even have an answer of what should say, but for some reason I'm like, you know what, this just isn't the time, or I don't want to create that much conflict. But there are certainly other times where I fall in the other ditch, where I probably say too much and need to back off. I really think, you talk about the winsome nature, which really is sort of a new concept to me. I don't know that many people have described me that way all my life, but probably part of that comes from just being raised in the South. I'm from Louisiana, being a guy where manners are very important, people's feelings are important, and then being in the medical or in the exam room for decades, trying to either calm people down or talk to them with respect. I always felt that was very important. My mother thought that was important and really emphasized that to me. But really speaking to people that are upset and trying to calm them down, typically often with bad news comes, or an emergency is present, or there's some kind of stressful situation, and probably just learning that through trial by error and in the fire, so to speak. So to apply some of that to evangelism, which is really what we were talking about Saturday night, is how can we put forth the name of Christ in such a way that is respectful to the people that are listening, but yet honest, direct, and to the point to some extent where people need to hear that. It's a balancing act.
It's interesting you mentioned that about growing up in the South. Our friends Colin and Aaron Jackson, Scott Jones, that moved to New York recently to be a part of planning a church. Someone from New York that's a believer that was giving them some advice. They said, hey, don't lose your Southern charm. You might be tempted to think New York is a harsh city, so we need to be more harsh. They said, actually, the Southern respect is going to be really refreshing here. So they said, don't quit being a Southerner because you're in New York. That's actually going to be an evangelistic tool, that you treat people kindly. And that was refreshing to hear, and neat for a New Yorker to say. So one of the things I hear a lot when I think about what might push someone into silence, there's two things I tend to hear. One is the fear that I'm incompetent, that I just don't know what to say. And the other is the fear of being disrespectful, that if I say anything, I'm going to be crossing a line, disrespecting the other person. So if you think about those two fears, I don't have anything to say at all. Or if I say, I'll say it wrong, I'll burn the relationship, I'll toast things. I don't want to do that. You train us here in apologetics and how to give a reason for what we believe. How would you speak to those two fears of I don't know anything to say, or I'm afraid of being disrespectful?
Well, to the first, I don't know anything to say. I think we could all fall back into that fear. Our life is speaking for us, right? It's already saying, hopefully people see the gospel in us, even without speaking. The other thing is, I usually tell people, and even myself, is if I don't know the answer, I'll say, hey, you know what, that's a really good question. Can I get back to you on that? Let's look that up. But I think more than that, it's a driver for each of us to be discipled, to begin to learn and read and think through these issues of the day. We all have to start somewhere. And, the chances are that the other individual asking the question would be in the same sort of situation. I mean, they're asking for a reason, and you may not have that answer, but I'd say the first thing to do is to step into that. I can remember even in probably an analogy of my medical training is, you start off not knowing anything, and then you start doing a procedure here or there, you start learning, and then before you know it, you look back and you have developed a depth of ways to answer questions or handle certain situations. I mean, for the other, as far as one who may not speak up because they're worried about the reaction to the other person, I mean, I think that's where being somewhat winsome can be helpful, and also really acknowledging or understanding that all people need Christ. And they may not know that yet, and that all people are made in the image of God. And there's always something that you can find in another person that is a bit familiar to you, something that is similar, that you can find some common ground to talk about that. Even with Peter standing before the Sanhedrin, I mean, he acknowledged that they were people of authority, and the passages certainly implied this whole idea that they were after power. Well, we've got a better name that could give you power in the name of Jesus.
Yeah, that's good. It's interesting you making the medical comparison, because it reminded me, a story my doctor told me, our personal doctor told me a while back, was he said when he was fresh out of med school, when somebody started a medication and they told him he had a reaction that wasn't on the list of possible reactions, he told them they were wrong. The medicine doesn't do that to you. And he said now that he's practiced a little while, he knows medicine can do all kinds of crazy things to people. So when a patient tells him, I had this reaction and it's not on his list, he just goes, okay. He said experience actually learned him to be more comfortable with the idea that there's some things I haven't heard of. There's some things I haven't seen. And I think sometimes my fear can be showing that lack of knowledge will somehow invalidate my faith, or it'll prove exactly what that person thought. Oh, Christians don't have answers. But with experience, it tends to be the opposite, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely the opposite. I think people appreciate honesty and humility, so you're not making up an answer on the fly that you really don't know, but you just want to look like you knew. But really just honestly saying, Nick, that's a great question. I appreciate that. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that others do. And hey, let's meet again for coffee next week. Let me have some time to think about it and research that topic. And would you meet with me again? And then that would give you an opportunity to kind of flesh that out. And I can almost guarantee you will not forget the answer to that question the next time it comes around.
Do you have any tips for people who are trying to learn? I get flustered in anything that feels like conflict. Like my heart starts racing. I start panicking and jumbling my words. And for anyone who is trying to learn how to engage when somebody's challenging or throwing hard questions at you, it can feel like conflict. It can feel intense. Any advice on how to kind of keep level and keep calm and engage that in a way that is respectful and kind? Practical tips you would give them.
Yeah, I think number one is it's not an ad hominem attack. In other words, they're not attacking you, Nick Rowland, the person.
Right.
And I think you have to separate yourself, your individual self, from the one being criticized, from the words that you're trying to say. So that's number one. Secondly, also, we're not the writers of the Scripture.
Yeah.
We are learning what they're saying. We are often quoting what they say, but it's the words that God says, not that you or I are saying. So we're basically trying to interpret that and apply an answer to the question that individual may have.
That's good.
So those are a couple of tips that kind of help me. But I think as much as anything is in some ways separating yourself from the argument that you're putting forth from yourself. And so that gives you a little more comfort and maybe more confidence. And then I think it gives you the freedom to say, look, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find out.
That's really good because it can feel like a personal attack, even though it's not. It's important to like remind ourselves of that regularly.
You know, one way that I've learned this over the years in my practice, I've done a lot of depositions, which is where I, the doctor, sit between two different attorneys, one a defense, one a plaintiff with a court reporter there. And it's typically related to a causation of a person's, for example, back injury or neck problem. And both sides are arguing over who's responsible. And they ask doctors to tell us their opinion based on what we know. And if you don't say what one side wants, the other goes at you on a personal level.
Yeah.
And initially, when I started doing those, it was very inflammatory, very hurtful.
Yeah.
I would get upset. And then I realized, you know what? They don't even know who I am.
Yeah.
So that helped me separate that. And I've been able to apply some of those principles to regular conversation with on a theological basis to those that we disagree.
That's really good. Okay, so now for the person who feels like there's a lot I don't know and I really want to get equipped more. You pointed us to some of the trainings on Saturday night, but can you tell us a little bit more about just what trainings are going on that you're a part of facilitating, and what would you point people to? What are you excited about for people who want to learn and grow more?
Oh, I love that question. And certainly in our congregation at Mosaic, we've got a lot of opportunities in small groups and men's studies and women's studies, very kind of one-off studies here and there. If those who are listening can take advantage of that, first and foremost. Secondly is really a walk with the Lord myself, where I am personally committed to a prayer life and learning more about who Jesus is through the Scriptures. And sometimes that just takes you sitting down, being disciplined to begin that process if you're not already in that. So once all that has been taken in consideration, I mean, we've got some incredible classes through the training center. For example, Nick, we've got our core classes that you personally have been very much involved with developing and teaching, which would be Panorama of the Bible, Our Faith, Personal Bible Study, and then Align Your Finances. We would love everyone to go through those 4 classes to begin with. Yeah, and in fact, of course, you wrote Our Faith and have been instrumental in teaching the other classes, specifically Panorama of the Bible and Personal Bible Study. So I love those classes. They're a really good place to start, to understand a big, broad overview of the Scripture, and to understand really what we believe, the essential Christian doctrine.
That's really, really good.
And then beyond that, we've got some what I might refer to as elective classes, which would be called Leadership Foundations, just leading in the church, looking at your heart and how that's done in a biblical way. We have advanced panorama classes. We call those Panorama Plus classes. And then what I love doing is teaching some apologetics, where we have one class in Defense of the Resurrection, and the other one is the Reliability of the Bible. Those 2 classes, in my view, kind of address cultural issues related to those subjects, which are probably 2 of the most important ones in our world today.
Yeah, I agree. If you are really firm on the reliability of Scripture and the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, you're off to a pretty good start in having a foundation for our faith and apologetics.
Yeah, and those were 2 classes that came out of my seminary training, and one of my assignments for both of those was to write at least one lecture or one talk, and end up kind of sort of parlaying that, so to speak, into more sessions in a class, and it's kind of continuing to grow. So those are good. We've also got some coming up on Introduction to Islam.
Okay, yeah.
And Introduction to Mormonism.
Very cool.
And how do we talk to our Mormon neighbor? How do we talk to our Muslim neighbor?
Very cool. Well, if you want to find out about any of those, the ones that are offered on Saturday night, there will be links on the front page of Mosaic's website. So you can find those there. Then you also can navigate to the menu on our website and see Training Center. And when you click on that, you can find all of those offerings, whether they're happening on Saturday or Sunday morning. So Ted, thanks for this. Thanks for this conversation. I think one of the images I'm going to walk away with it's really good for you to connect is just that idea of the non-anxious presence of a good doctor's bedside manner. And just what it looks like as an apologist to go, this isn't about me. This is about the other person, and they're wrestling with the Lord. And so I'm not under attack when they're wrestling. And so I'm just here to be a calm servant and to help where I can. And I think you embody that well. And it's a really good picture for us to take into our conversation. So we're really thankful for you and Suzanne being a part of our body and all you bring and who you are as people who walk with Jesus as well. So.
Well, thank you, Nick. It's quite a privilege and a joy to be here with you today and with Mosaic.
Yes, it is indeed. Well, hey, Mosaic, thanks for listening. Hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you next time.